She asked for leftovers. He looked into her eyes, and a miracle happened. Before the story begins, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story is reaching. And if you love true, heartfelt love stories, subscribe to the channel. That really helps our work grow and motivates us to keep bringing stories that warm the heart. A light rain fell on the gray streets of Chicago that November night. Storefronts sparkled with lights for the approaching Christmas, reflecting a hope that didn't reach everyone. Across the avenue, hidden under a worn-out awning, Valeria Mendoza, 27, tried to shield her son from the cold wind. Her coat was far too thin for the winter that was already settling in, and her shoes were soaked. In her arms, she carried Mateo, her 4-year-old boy, wrapped in a faded baby blanket with teddy bear designs. He slept deeply, his face nestled into his mother's neck, his frozen fingers clutching the simple necklace she never took off. Valeria hesitated in front of the glass revolving door of Whitmore's, one of the city's most luxurious restaurants. Men in suits came out smiling, accompanied by elegant women in high heels and expensive perfume. Inside, warmth and instrumental. Music stood in stark contrast to the world outside. She took a deep breath. Shame burned like embers in her throat, but Mateo hadn't had dinner, and she hadn't eaten since the morning before. She stepped inside cautiously, like someone afraid of being noticed. Her jeans were stained, and her dark brown hair, pulled up hastily, was coming loose from the bun. Her light brown skin, marked with a few freckles on her nose, showed signs of exhaustion. But her large, expressive hazel eyes held a dignity that was impossible to ignore. The maitre d' approached, stiff, eyeing her from head to toe. "Sorry, Mom, we have a reservation policy." Valeria raised her eyes with determination, even through the embarrassment. I don't want a table. I just wanted to ask if you have any leftover food, anything. I'm just trying to feed my son." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. One of the waitresses looked at her with compassion. A couple whispered, visibly bothered. And up on the glass mezzanine, Logan Whitmore, 35, was watching everything. He stood by the bar, a whiskey glass in hand, dressed in a flawless dark blue suit. He had a striking presence, with neatly styled dirty blonde hair, a well-groomed stubble, and steely blue-gray eyes that hid more than they revealed. But in that moment, something in his expression changed. As he looked at her, he froze. There was something about that woman, that look, an old reflection, a familiar pain. Valeria was already turning, ready to leave with what little dignity she had left, when a firm voice echoed across the room. "Wait!" Everyone turned. Logan slowly descended the stairs, staring at Valeria as if he knew her. He stopped in front of her. "What's your son's name?" She hesitated. "Mateo." "And yours?" "Valeria." Logan knelt down, drawing closer, to the boy who was still asleep. The room was completely silent. He looked at the child's peaceful face, then back into the mother's eyes. "You don't need leftovers. You'll have dinner as my guests." Valeria's eyes widened. "Why? Why would you do that for someone like me?" Logan looked away, clearly moved. "Because sometimes all someone needs is a gesture no one ever had the courage to offer before." The waitress led them to a reserved table in the corner. The scene felt out of place in the otherwise sophisticated dining room. Valeria, still holding her son, sat down slowly. She didn't know whether to accept or cry. Meanwhile, Logan returned to the balcony and watched the snow begin to fall outside. He couldn't explain what had just happened. He only knew that when he looked into those hazel eyes, he felt like maybe there was still time to fix something inside himself. And that was the beginning of everything. The smell of hot food drifted through the restaurant like a cruel temptation. Valeria, still standing, held Mateo in her now numb arms, but the boy kept sleeping, his face buried in her shoulder, unaware of the world around him. The dining room felt frozen in time. All eyes were on her, as if the presence of that woman, in simple clothes and worn-out shoes, was a silent insult to the pristine luxury of the place. The manager, a middle-aged man with slicked-back hair and a firm voice, stepped forward, trying to restore order to the room. "Ma'am, this is not the place for this kind of request. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Valeria's stomach turned. Her face burned with shame. She started to turn around, murmuring an almost inaudible sorry. But before she could take the first step, she heard a voice cut through the air. "Wait." It was a calm, deep, and firm voice, and it came from above. Everyone turned. On the glass mezzanine, Logan Whitmore, standing tall in his tailored suit, watched the scene with his eyes fixed on her. He didn't know why, but something about that woman struck him deeply. Maybe it was the way she held her son, like even in exhaustion she was still protecting him from the world. Or maybe it was the way she hadn't begged, hadn't humiliated herself, but simply asked with dignity. Logan descended the steps with steady strides. He was tall, with dark blonde, neatly combed hair, stubble on his face, and blue-gray eyes marked by weariness and silence. A man used to control, but now his chest felt tight, and he didn't know why. Valeria looked at him with a mix of fear and confusion. She wasn't expecting mercy, especially not from someone like him. Logan stopped in front of her and Mateo, who was still asleep. "What's his name?" he asked gently, nodding toward the boy. "Mateo," she answered, her voice choked. Logan lowered his gaze slightly, observing the child's face. There was something in that image, mother and son fused in a single act of survival, that stirred something buried inside him. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Then you'll have dinner here," Logan said, now looking at the manager. "Treat her with respect. I want a hot, full meal now." The manager opened his mouth, surprised. "Mr. Whitmore, perhaps we should consider—" "I'm not asking for your opinion." Logan cut him off without raising his voice, but with unquestionable authority. The hostess, flustered, led Valeria to a table in the corner, away from the most judgmental glances. It was the same table where Logan dined every night, but now he had quietly reserved it for her, a gesture that made no sense to anyone, not even to himself. Valeria sat slowly, adjusting Mateo on her lap. She looked around nervously, as if everything might disappear at any moment. When the plate arrived, grilled chicken, rice with vegetables, and a steaming bowl of soup, her eyes filled with tears. But she took a deep breath and held herself together. She wanted her son to wake up and see that even at rock bottom, his mother still had dignity. Up on the mezzanine, Logan returned to his spot. With a glass in hand, he watched the two of them. A strange warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something was different, that maybe there was still something pure inside him, despite everything he had built to hide his own pain. But he didn't know that this encounter was only the beginning, just the start of a truth that would change not only Valeria's life, but also his. And what he didn't know yet was that Mateo was hiding more than just hunger. He was hiding a secret that would put everything at stake. The next morning, the Chicago sky was gray, as if it had absorbed the emotional weight of the night before. The wind was cold, biting, but Valeria walked with determined steps. She wasn't carrying her son in her arms anymore. Mateo now, awake and holding her hand, jumped through puddles with a shy smile. She wasn't coming back to ask for anything, not this time. In the pocket of her old coat, carefully folded, was a paper stained with colored pencil, a simple drawing, a tall man next to a woman holding a child, all surrounded by hearts. In the bottom corner, in childish letters, it read, "Thank you for saving my dinner." Valeria had spent most of the night trying to convince Mateo to sleep, but before closing his eyes, he had said, "Mommy, we have to say thank you to the man." She stopped in front of Whitmore's. The golden sign gleamed under the dim daylight. She took a deep breath and went in. The hostess recognized her and heads turned again, but this time Valeria held her chin up. "I'd just like to leave this for Mr. Whitmore. It's a thank you. I don't need to see him. I just wanted to deliver it." The hostess hesitated, but accepted the envelope gently. At that exact moment, Logan was coming out of the glass office in the back of the room. His gaze met Valeria's, and something in his expression softened. "Valeria," he said, coming down the steps quickly. "You came back." She gave a small, discreet smile and held out the envelope. "I just wanted to say thank you, not for last night, but for reminding me that there are still people who see, who really see." Logan held the envelope carefully, as if it was something precious. His blue eyes lingered on the drawing, and he took a deep breath. "Do you have time for a coffee?" Before she could answer, two men approached, Logan's business partners, both in suits, with tense expressions. Behind them, an elegant woman with impeccable posture and grey hair in a bun. It was Margaret Whitmore, Logan's mother and co-founder of the restaurant chain. "Logan, can we talk for a moment?" one of the partners said, casting a discreet glance at Valeria, as if she were a problem to be solved. Logan nodded, looking at Valeria with a mix of embarrassment and frustration. "Just give me a minute. I'll be right back." Valeria quietly sat in a chair in the lobby, with Mateo in her lap, now drawing on another piece of paper. She could only hear fragments of the conversation, but she felt the weight of each word like stones. "This is getting out of control," one partner said. "She could be up to something," Margaret muttered coldly. "The company's image is at stake, Logan. You've been generous. Now, be smart." Logan ran a hand through his hair, visibly bothered. "She didn't ask for anything. She just thanked me, that's all." Margaret stared at him firmly. "Son, you're emotionally vulnerable. Don't confuse charity with neediness." He stepped away abruptly. He returned to Valeria, visibly torn. "Valeria, listen, maybe it's best if we keep a bit of distance, at least for now." She frowned. "You think I came back to ask for more?" "No, that's not what I meant. It's just that your reputation is on the line, right?" Valeria's hazel eyes welled with restrained tears. She stood up, lifting Mateo firmly into her arms. "Thank you for the food, Mr. Whitmore, but don't worry, I won't be coming back." She walked toward the door without looking back, and even with her eyes fixed on the ground, she felt every stare burn into her back like blades. Logan stood still, the drawing still in his hands, and at that exact moment he realized he had doubted the only person who asked for nothing in return. But it was already too late. Outside, under the grey sky, Valeria cried in silence at the bus stop with Mateo clinging to her. And as the bus approached, she squeezed her eyes shut and thought to herself, it was just a thank you, that's all, and not even that they could accept. She didn't know it, but that moment of humiliation would be what triggered the next turning point. The city hadn't finished with her, not yet. The drawing was still on Logan's office desk. He had left it there, between contracts, memos, and forgotten glasses, as if he didn't have the courage to throw it away or keep it. The crumpled paper carried an energy that wouldn't leave his mind. The simple lines, the hearts around the three figures, and that childlike thank you echoed more than any advertising campaign ever made for the Whitmore's brand. That night he didn't go home. Sitting in the dark leather armchair, eyes fixed on nothing, Logan felt an unease he couldn't name. The image of Valeria walking away with her son in her arms haunted him like a ghost, and the more he tried to suppress the feeling, the stronger it grew. He picked up his phone and accessed a public database, typed Valeria Mendoza, Chicago Public School. He didn't know why, but something about that woman felt too familiar. Like he had seen her before, in another life, in another time. There weren't many files, but enough to awaken something forgotten. Westside Public School, class of 2010. His eyes stopped on a student list, and among the names, his, Aaron Whitmore, his younger brother, the same one who died of an overdose at 17. Logan felt a chill. That digital page seemed to suck the air out of his lungs. Aaron, the brilliant, creative, sweet brother, but also lonely, misunderstood. After their father's death, he had sunk into a dark silence no one could reach, not even Logan. The pain of that loss, locked away, for years, returned with force, and now the name just below Aaron's was hers, Valeria Mendoza. Logan put his hands over his face and shut his eyes tightly. This couldn't be a coincidence. He pulled more records, old photos, school events. In one of them, Aaron was smiling, sideways holding a hand-painted banner. In the background, a dark-skinned girl with braided hair smiled shyly. It was her, Valeria, almost unrecognizable, but the eyes were the same. Eyes that saw the world more deeply than they let on. Logan then called one of his brother's former teachers, the only one who still had occasional contact with the family. "Mr. Daniels, this is Logan Whitmore. I need to ask you something about Aaron." The teacher's voice on the other end sounded surprised and somber. "Logan, this is unexpected. Of course. What do you need to know?" "Do you remember a student named Valeria Mendoza? She was in his class in 2010? Silence, then a slow sigh. "Valeria. How could I forget? She was the only one who tried to help him. A lot of people ignored Aaron for being troubled, but Valeria, she sat next to him at lunch, brought him snacks when she knew he hadn't eaten at home. One time, she even went with him to a parent meeting when his mom didn't show up." Logan closed his eyes, feeling a lump in his throat. "And why did we never know about this?" he asked. "Because she never made a scene. She didn't want attention. She just wanted him to be okay." The call ended, but Logan's mind kept spinning. He stood up and paced around the office like a trapped animal, trying to understand how fate had put him face to face again with that woman. She wasn't just someone in need. She was a lost link to a past he'd never had the courage to face. And now, she had a child. A boy with deep brown eyes. Logan sat down again, breathing heavily. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about investments, public image, or profit. He was thinking about Aaron, thinking about Valeria, wondering if somehow fate was giving him a chance to fix what he couldn't save. But what he still didn't know was that the past hid more than memories. It hid a truth he had never been ready to hear. Outside, the cold was growing stronger. The streets of Chicago were covered in dry leaves, and the days were getting shorter, as if time itself were asking for silence. But inside Logan, everything was noise. The noise of memories, regrets, of a past that now had a face, a name, and hazel eyes. In the days following the discovery of the connection between Valeria and Aaron, Logan tried to find her more than once. He knocked on the wrong doors, searched in shelters, community cafes, support centers. Every time he asked about her, he was met with suspicious glances, as if he were just another rich man playing at charity. It was only on the fourth day that he found her. Valeria was leaving a laundromat with a bag over her shoulder and Mateo holding tightly to her hand. She looked thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze still had that quiet strength. When she saw him, she froze instinctively. Her eyes narrowed, her whole body tensed like someone bracing for another blow. "Valeria," Logan said, walking toward her, hands open without arrogance. No suit, just jeans, a dark sweater, and a tired face. "Do you have a minute?" She looked at him without answering. Mateo looked at him, curious but stayed, close to his mother. "I don't want anything from you," Valeria finally said curtly. "It was humiliating enough. I know, and I didn't come with empty apologies. Just, please, give me a chance to talk." She hesitated. The bag slipped a little from her shoulder. Mateo tugged on her hand. "Mummy, it's the man with the chicken and rice." Valeria looked at her son, and in that instant, like time rewinding, she saw Aaron laughing on the school sidewalk, the two of them making promises about the future. She took a deep breath. 5 minutes, she said at last. They sat on a nearby little square, on a worn wooden bench facing an empty playground. Logan spoke first. "I found out you knew my brother." She looked up slowly, unsurprised. "Took you long enough." "He was my brother, Valeria, and I wasn't there. Not at the end. I always thought it was because he didn't want help, but I understand now. He just didn't know how to ask." She swallowed hard, her fingers clutching the fabric of her coat. Aaron was good, kind. He laughed at everything, even when there was no reason to, and he believed in me. We made plans, you know. We said one day we'd get out of there, that we'd study, work, and prove that we weren't invisible. Logan listened in silence, his chest heavy. "But the same day he died," Valeria continued, "I was evicted too. My mom had been gone for weeks. My dad never met him. And that was our deadline. Me and Aaron, we shared more than a school. We shared hope." She went quiet for a moment, her eyes teary but steady. "When I found out he died, I was sitting on a sidewalk with 2 bags and nowhere to go, and no one came. No one asked. Because no one looks at someone who already has nothing." Logan took a deep, shaky breath. He ran a hand over his eyes, trying to hold back the emotion. "I grew up thinking our family was the victim of a tragedy. But now I see the tragedy was much bigger. It was a machine, a system that you fell into, and we pretended not to see." Valeria looked at him more calmly. "So why do you see it now?" Logan looked over at Mateo, who was playing with a stick, unaware of the conversation. "Because now I've seen you, and I can't unsee it." There was a long silence between them. "I don't want pity, Logan," she said, "or charity. I just want justice. I just want to live in a world where my son doesn't have to draw thank yous for scraps of dignity." Logan nodded. Her pain was so real it tore something inside him. "Maybe I can't change the world, Valeria, but I can start trying to change the way I exist in it." She didn't answer, but she didn't get up, and for Logan that was a beginning. He didn't know it yet, but that conversation would be the spark that lit a movement. Because sometimes everything begins when 2 people finally listen to each other, but what neither of them knew was that the past hadn't yet shown its cruelest part. 2 days later, Logan parked his car a few blocks from where the GPS had indicated. The system said he had arrived, but nothing around looked like a final destination. The buildings were crumbling, with windows patched up by plastic or wood. Trash piled up in corners, clothes hung between poles, and barefoot children ran over cracked pavement. It was like the city had erased this place from the map, hidden beneath layers of concrete and Chicago's rush. He got out of the car hesitantly, wearing dark jeans, a worn leather jacket, not the man who usually appeared on magazine covers in tailored suits. He walked slowly, taking in every detail. An elderly woman in a wheelchair in front of an abandoned market, a boy trying to push a bike with no tires, 2 young mothers sharing a pack of diapers donated by some NGO. And then he saw her. Valeria, in a loose hoodie and hair tied up with a printed scarf, was folding clothes on a broken plastic chair. Mateo played nearby with bottle caps and soda lids, building a city on the sidewalk. She noticed him. Their eyes met. And for a moment, neither said a word. Logan took a deep breath and crossed the narrow street. "You came," she said without a smile, but also without backing away. "I needed to see," he replied. "See what? That this place exists? That we exist?" Logan nodded, his eyes scanning the scene. A dull pain grew in his chest, a kind of pain he didn't recognize. It wasn't loss, it was shame. The shame of never having stepped foot there, of never caring about the numbers behind the statistics he used in his philanthropy speeches. When I think about my house, he murmured, everything seems excessive. Valeria crossed her arms, watching him cautiously. It's not your fault you were born on the other side of the map, she said. But it's your choice. What you do now that you've crossed the line. Logan nodded with a heavy sigh. He was visibly shaken. He walked past a group of kids playing with plastic bags as kites. One of the boys looked at him and asked, "Are you a cop?" Logan gave a sad smile. "No, just getting to know the neighborhood." "Good luck," the boy replied, running off again. Farther down, Logan sat next to Valeria on the sidewalk, leaning against the rough building wall. The difference between their worlds had never been more obvious, but in that moment, it didn't matter. Mateo came over, handing Logan a folded piece of paper. It was another drawing. This time, the three of them were holding a kite. Logan swallowed hard. "He draws everything he wants to live," Valeria said softly. "Not what he already has." "He's lucky to have you," Logan replied. "Aaron didn't." She looked at him, surprised by the vulnerable tone. "You talk like someone carrying the weight of the world." "I am," Logan admitted, "but it's a world I built myself, made of closed doors and walls too high." They sat in silence for a while. In the background, an old radio played a scratchy blues tune. A dog barked in the distance. Valeria looked at him in profile, and for a second her expression softened. "Why are you really here, Logan?" He turned to her. Their eyes met, too close. The wind blew gently, lifting a strand of her hair. Without thinking, Logan tucked it carefully behind her ear. His fingers brushed her skin, and for a moment the world stopped. "Because when I see you, Valeria, I remember who I was supposed to be." The silence between them now was different, not the silence of discomfort, but of something that couldn't yet be spoken. She looked away, taking a deep breath. "Careful, Logan," she whispered. "Your world's not ready to see me by your side." He watched her for a moment longer, feeling the weight of what was beginning to grow between them, something fragile but real, something that would challenge everything. But before he could respond, his phone vibrated. It was his mother, Margaret Whitmore, full screen, calling persistently. Logan looked at the screen, then at Valeria. He didn't answer. The following days were filled with a tense silence between Logan and the world around him. But inside, something was starting to become clear. For the first time, the gears of his life stopped turning around numbers, reputation, and inheritance. Valeria had put everything into perspective. On the morning he made his decision, Logan walked through the main hall of Whitmore Group's headquarters with steady steps. He wore a simple jacket, no tie, with the determined look of someone who wasn't there to ask for approval. He gathered the directors in a glass-walled conference room where he usually presented international expansion reports. But that day, the plan was different. "I'm launching a new social branch of the company," he announced. "It's called Project Root. It'll focus on rebuilding neglected communities, education, food, job training, and I've already chosen who's going to lead it." The executives exchanged tense glances. One of them spoke up. "With all due respect, Logan, who would that be?" He pulled a picture from his pocket, Mateo's drawing, already yellowed from the folds. He placed it gently on the table. "Valeria Mendoza, she's where we really begin." Faces around the table tightened. Whispers spread like splinters. One of the partners shook his head. "You're going to appoint a nobody as director of a project that carries our name?" Logan crossed his arms. "She's not a nobody. She's someone who's seen more of reality than anyone in this room, and I trust her." Hours later, Valeria received the official offer. A paid position with autonomy, her own office, and the mission to lead the community project alongside a team of her choosing. She was in shock. "Is this real?" she asked, eyes wide. "Completely real," Logan replied, smiling genuinely. I want you to carry forward what you started without even knowing it. This project was born the day you asked for leftovers. Now it's time to serve dignity on full plates. She hesitated. Fear outweighed the excitement. They're going to eat me alive, Logan. I don't belong in that world. He'd lightly touched her hand on the table of the small cafe where they sat. Maybe, for the first time, the world needs to belong to you. Valeria accepted. The news leaked in less than 48 hours. Gossip sites, business portals, anonymous forums. Billionaire heir gives job to woman who asks for food in the trash. Romance or charity, CEO hires single mum as project director. Is he falling for a homeless woman? Headlines popped up like digital poison. In a TV studio, footage of Valeria entering Whitmore's restaurant on the day of the request was aired out of context. "Watch the video that shocked Chicago," said the host with a plastic smile. The recording, made by a customer, showed Valeria tired, with her son in her arms, asking for food. Paused at the moment the manager looked down on her. She became a joke. Edits were made, memes spread. They called her an opportunist, an actress, a gold digger. At Whitmore Group's headquarters, Margaret burst through her son's office door. "You've completely lost your mind," she shouted, her face pale with rage. "She's destroying everything we built." "She hasn't destroyed anything," Logan replied, his eyes tired. "What's falling apart is an empire built on silence and arrogance, and maybe it needs to fall. If you keep going with this, Logan, I'll remove you from the presidency. You know I can." He was silent for a few seconds. The phone buzzed in his hand, messages piling up. "Then do it. But know that if you take this from me, you'll be taking everything except my conscience." As he stared his mother down across the city, Valeria was turning off the lights in the room where Mateo slept, sitting on the floor in silence. Her phone buzzed every minute, insults, cruel comments. She closed her eyes, holding back tears, not for herself, but for her son. For him to see his mother become a target, for growing up thinking gratitude was enough. But deep down, a fire still burned. She thought of the mothers in the neighborhood, of the invisible faces, of the hunger no one ever filmed, of the hope no one wanted to report. And there, in the dark of the small apartment, Valeria made herself a promise. If they want to bring me down, they'll need more than a video. I'll grow roots. After the scandal, Valeria disappeared. She left no note, didn't answer calls. Her social media was deleted. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The small apartment she shared with Mateo was emptied in the middle of a quiet night, without warning or a trace. It was as if she had vanished into the air, or rather, shielded herself from a world that was crushing her from all sides. Logan spiraled into a search. He hired investigators, searched in community centers, churches, clinics, public schools. He even walked alone through the south side of Chicago, asking with a photo of Mateo in his pocket and a hope growing fainter in his eyes. "Have you seen this child around here? Her name is Valeria. She has hazel eyes and a smile that doesn't come easy." The answers were always the same: silence, denial, or sad compassion. For weeks, he tried to maintain the company's routine, but everything felt pointless. Meetings sounded hollow. Ad campaigns superficial. Even the luxurious environments, with their meticulously designed decor, began to make him feel sick. He sat in the car, staring up at the tall buildings, and thought, what's the point of building empires if I couldn't protect the one who needed me the most? Until, on a grey afternoon nearly 6 months after Valeria's disappearance, Logan wandered into a modest cafe in the Englewood neighborhood. He was late for a charity event, but felt a tightness in his chest and needed silence. The place was simple, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and old wood. A few tables were occupied by mothers with young children, lonely men with newspapers in hand, teenagers exchanging shy glances. Logan ordered a black coffee and sat in the back, near a wall covered in children's drawings. He was about to pull his phone out of his pocket when something caught his eye, a paper taped to the wall, more worn than the others. 3 figures. A tall man, a woman with her hair wrapped in a scarf, and a boy in the middle holding both their hands. In the bottom corner, Mateo, 5 years old. Logan stood as if punched in the gut. He touched the drawing with trembling fingers. The handwriting, the lines, the hearts drawn in the background, it was him, it was her, it was her son, her son. He asked the barista, a young woman with braids and a gentle smile, "This drawing, do you know who brought it?" She frowned, thinking, "Oh, it was a lady who came in a few weeks ago with her little boy. He wanted to hang the drawing to show he had found a real family, but I don't think they stayed around. They caught a bus soon after." Logan left the cafe with his heart on fire. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was something deeper. A realization that cut through him like a blade. Valeria wasn't running from him. She was trying to save him from himself. She understood the weight his presence carried, the fame, the exposure, the brutality of a world that doesn't forgive anyone born on the wrong side of town. And yet she had loved him, quietly, in the only language she knew, distance. Logan walked through the dirty streets, the cold wind biting his face. He stopped in front of a dusty window and saw his reflection, the same man as always, but now with the eyes of someone who could see beyond the surface. There, in the rush of cars and the murmur of the city, he whispered, "If I want to change her world, I have to change mine first." And for the first time, Logan Whitmore knew where to start. The reflection in the glass still burned in Logan's thoughts as he stepped onto the makeshift stage in the concrete courtyard of the restored factory on the south side of Chicago. Before him, a crowd had gathered. Mothers with strollers, men with torn backpacks, curious teens, journalists, cameras, skeptical politicians, and media outlets that would never have come there if not for him. A huge banner hung in the background, painted by local artists, leftovers to lives, from scraps to new beginnings. At the mic, Logan no longer wore the dark suit of Whitmore Group. He had on a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, and a light linen blazer. On his chest, a small pin with Aaron's initials hand-stitched. He took a deep breath. This moment wasn't about numbers or headlines. "For many years," he began, his voice rough, "I represented an idea of success built on invisible walls. I grew up believing I deserved everything I had, and that those who didn't maybe just hadn't tried hard enough." He paused. The silence was complete. "But I was wrong." He looked around. His teary eyes weren't part of a rehearsed speech. They were real. "A few months ago, I met a woman. She walked into my restaurant asking for leftovers. She didn't beg, she didn't shame herself, she just asked, and in that moment everything I believed began to collapse." He turned his face slightly as if talking to a ghost. "That woman reminded me of my brother, Aaron, a brilliant boy, ignored by the same system that lifted me up. He didn't die from a lack of love. He died from a lack of being heard, of presence, of a space where he could fully exist." People in the crowd began to get emotional. Some hugged each other, others cried quietly. It was for him and for her that I stepped down today as CEO of Whitmore Group. A murmur swept through the audience. "I left what I inherited to build what I believe in, because success without purpose is just noise." He pointed to the building behind him. "This is the headquarters of Leftovers to Lives, a place of refuge, of dignified meals, job training and rebuilding. A place for single mothers who were forgotten. A place where no child has to say thank you for scraps. Here, starting over is a right, not a stroke of luck." Applause began softly but grew like a wave. Logan stepped away from the mic, taking A deep breath, that's when he saw her. In the middle of the crowd, near the shadow of a tree, Valeria held Mateo's hand. She wore a simple wool sweater and worn jeans, her hair tied back with the same patterned scarf as always, but her eyes were different. There was pride, there was emotion, and there was fear. Mateo, wide-eyed, waved. Logan froze. His heart beat so fast, he could barely feel the ground beneath his feet. He stepped down slowly from the stage. People subtly stepped aside, sensing what was about to happen. He stopped in front of her, without saying a word. Valeria looked at him for a moment, eyes heavy with emotion. Then she whispered, "Why did you do this, Logan?" "Because everything I built without you was rubble." She blinked slowly, holding back tears. "I was afraid of what your world would do to me, to us." "I was afraid too," he answered. "But now I understand it's not you who needs to adapt. It's my world that needs to learn how to deserve you." Mateo, without waiting, let go and wrapped his arms around Logan's legs. Valeria closed her eyes, and for a moment everything around them stopped. The sound, the light, the cold, the flashes. There was only that moment. She hadn't said yes yet, but she didn't walk away. And for Logan, that was the beginning of rebuilding. Mateo was the first to move. The moment Logan stepped down from the stage, the boy let go of his mother's hand and ran with arms wide open, cutting through the crowd with the purity of someone who doesn't need permission to love. "Logan!" he shouted, smiling. The businessman instinctively knelt down and welcomed him into his arms, eyes full of tears. He hugged the boy tightly against his chest, like someone holding on to something they thought they'd lost forever. "Hey, champ, I missed you," he said, voice breaking. Mateo rested his face on Logan's shoulder, silent. And in that moment, everything else disappeared. The attacks, the fears, the scandal, the judgment, only what was real remained. Logan looked at Valeria. She stood there, full of restrained emotion, her body steady, but her uneven breath betraying everything she held inside. He walked toward her slowly, still holding Mateo, who now looked on calmly. "Valeria," he began, his voice faltering at the first breath. I'm sorry for every time you were invisible, for every time I had power and didn't use it, for taking so long to realize that love isn't about appearances, it's about presence." She didn't respond. She just looked into his eyes, and in that gaze, Logan saw all the pain, all the disappointment, but also hope. A shy kind of hope, hidden deep in someone who had suffered too much to believe easily. He took one step closer. "I can't erase what hurt you, but I can be by your side to help build what still can be, if you'll let me." Valeria said nothing. She simply opened her arms and embraced him. It was a slow gesture, almost sacred, a hug with no rush, one that didn't need words. The people around them watched in silence. Some applauded with tears in their eyes, others simply smiled, the kind of smile that knows certain reunions aren't meant for the eyes, they're for the heart. Days later, a community fair filled the neighborhood's central square. Colorful stalls, makeshift games, sewing workshops, and group discussions. It was one of those rare, sunny days in Chicago, a day that smelled like new beginnings. Valeria helped at an artisan bread stand, wearing a floral apron and laughing at something an elderly woman had just told her. Her face looked lighter than it had in a long time. Across the way, Logan carried boxes of organic produce, sweaty, with his sleeves rolled up and a cap turned backward. In a spontaneous gesture, he stopped to help an elderly woman tie her shoelaces, kneeling down and smiling like a man who now understood the greatness in small things. Valeria watched him from a distance, and she smiled. It wasn't the same smile she had when she first walked into the restaurant on that cold night. This one was different, a smile born from peace, from surrender, from the certainty that he had changed, not for her, but for himself. Little by little, the whole city began to see them differently. The scandal became a story. The nasty comments disappeared from social media, and what remained was something no one could deny. There was love there, real love. Love that doesn't need to explain itself. Love that endured prejudice, inequality, silence. Love that finally had room to bloom. 2 years had passed since that quiet reunion under the tree. Time hadn't erased the scars, but it had turned each wound into a root, and each root into a foundation. Logan and Valeria now lived together in a modest house in Bridgeport, on the south side of Chicago. The house had a small porch with potted plants that Mateo watered every morning, light-colored walls with marks of real life, and a kitchen where the smell of coffee and fresh bread filled their Sundays with a peace no luxury could ever offer. Mateo was growing fast. At 7 years old, he still drew as a way of understanding the world. His new hobby was hanging phrases on his bedroom wall. One of them read, "Family is who hears what silence doesn't say." Logan had changed, not just on the outside, no suit, no security, no armored car, but on the inside. His once cold eyes now held a quiet warmth. He had learned to listen, to wait, to walk at someone else's pace without rushing to fix everything. Valeria, in turn, had blossomed. She no longer spoke with fear. She was an active part of the foundation, gave talks, wrote reports with confidence and clarity, and guided other women who were exactly where she had once been. The Leftovers. To Lives Foundation now operated in 5 states: Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Missouri, and Wisconsin. It was more than an organization. It was a movement. Hot meals, job training, dignified housing, and above all, listening. A place where no one was treated like a leftover. At the Foundation's main office, now renovated with exposed brick, recycled furniture and murals painted by local artists, there was a central frame right at the entrance. A drawing by Mateo, framed with reclaimed wood. 3 figures, a woman with a scarf in her hair, a man with outstretched hands, and a boy in the middle. In the background, hearts and a yellow light radiating. Below, in childlike handwriting, "Miracles don't fall from the sky. They start when someone looks and chooses not to look away." It was more than art. It was a statement. During the Foundation's expansion ceremony into the 5th state, a journalist approached Valeria at the end of the event. "Do you remember the exact moment when everything started to change?" she asked, adjusting the microphone. Valeria looked at Logan, who was talking with a group of young apprentices. Then she looked at Mateo, chasing a colorful kite. She took a deep breath and replied, "I do. It was when someone saw me and didn't look away. And when I decided that even hurt, I wouldn't run anymore." "Do you believe in miracles?" Valeria smiled softly. "I do, but not like magic. I believe in miracles made of courage, of presence, of small choices that change everything." That night, back home, Valeria lay her head on Logan's shoulder, while Mateo slept between them on his stomach, holding a storybook. Logan looked at her and said softly, "You changed my world, Valeria, and I just wish I'd seen it sooner." She kissed his forehead and replied, "It doesn't matter when. What matters is that you chose to stay." The room fell into silence. Outside, the wind blew softly, cradling the night like a well-kept secret. And so, without grand promises or dramatic endings, their story went on. Through laughter, simple meals, real challenges, and a love that didn't need to be explained to exist. Because in the end, the real lesson wasn't in the grand gestures. It was in the act of seeing to not looking away. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Leave a comment with a rating from 0 to 10 to let me know how much this journey touched you. I really want to hear how this story reached you. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share it with someone special, and subscribe to the channel. That helps so much so more stories like this can keep being told. And before you go, I've picked out another touching story that will move your heart even deeper. Click on the video that's on the screen now. I'll be waiting for you there.